and the police department. They're able to identify problem areas that they can then address specifically. As Dave mentioned, also there's the weekly East Crime meeting. Again, those are great opportunities for residents to come, talk to the police department, talk to the police officers, and tell them specifically what issues they see. I think that's the primary way to keep crime down in East Nashville is to fully funding those departments and keeping open lines of communication. I think it's kind of funny, I was having a conversation with someone the other day. They were actually talking about ways to increase parking enforcement and things like that. We've come a long way in East Nashville if we're talking about parking rather than drive-by shootings. But again, it's something that you can't let the eye off the ball, because our neighborhood is judged so many times by this perception that it's not safe. All of us here in this room know that's not true. So we've got to make sure we can't let up on that, but we're making great strides. And as councilman, I will advocate for full funding of those departments and a commitment to keeping open communication between neighborhood associations, citizens, and the police department. Thank you.
Make sure I keep my round robin straight here. Next question. Education is a huge part of the city's budget, and public schools need a lot of support. Describe your commitment to our public schools and what needs to be done for public education if you're elected.
And this question, I'm glad that it's one of the first questions, because it certainly is one of the first questions for all of us and our commitment to education. What needs to happen is exactly what has happened recently, and that is for the council, all councilmen, to make a commitment that they're going to fully fund education. Recently, one of the problems that exists for our council is that Governor Haslam's office decided that he was going to offer the public employees a 1.5% pay raise. Now, there's nothing wrong about giving the employees of public government a 1.5% pay raise. The problem is that he handed down that pay raise after the budgeting had already occurred on our council. That left a $4.3 million shortfall. That had to be funded by what we call our rainy day fund, the school debt fund, which brought that fund down roughly about $4.5 million. That, again, is an indication of the challenges that we're going to face in the future. When we start pulling out of our debt service funds to fully fund education, we understand that there's an economic headwind on the horizon. I want to make sure that our council, before we go ahead and we build the next stadium, before we fund the next entertainment venue, that we make sure that education is always fully funded. A lot of folks don't realize that education is funded in Nashville based upon the actual number of students that go to school. It's not the number of folks that enroll. And one of the things that's going on right over here at Rosebank Elementary is that now that the federal stimulus money is dried up, there is going to be much less funding in terms of federal stimulus dollars through Title I. I think right now, if I was looking at the budget last night, it's about $4 million that there's going to be a shortfall in Title I. That's the money that takes to even out and even the ratios for poor kids and rich kids and affluent students. So one of the things that we can do is we can guarantee that it will always be fully funded. When the school board comes to us and says, we need $670 million to fund the 84,000 students that we're going to be expecting in Metro Public Schools, I'll be a strong advocate to not only give it to them, but to encourage the rest of my colleagues on the council to do so as well. Now, one last thing. The challenges that are presented to our schools are not just in dollars. The challenges that are presented to our schools are also based on the neighborhoods. Over at Rosebank Elementary, I use them as an example because I've had a lot of experience in talking with the folks on the START and the other programs that are related to that school, and 90% of the children that go there are at or below the poverty level. The school last year had an operating budget of $128,000. This coming year, they're going to have an operating budget of $63,000. That is very, very concerning to me. So education is absolutely at the forefront of what we need to be focused on, and I certainly will do so. Thank you.
I agree. Education is a critical component of the success of our city, as both at the district level and the citywide. the city's going to be judged on our ability to attract businesses, and those businesses make decisions in part based on the public education system. Again, commit to full funding of the public school system. It's critical. We must do whatever it takes to fully fund those schools. Also, I think that another component of those is a commitment from parents, neighbor associations, and residents to help create a sense of belonging to those schools, that create work from the bottom up to improve those schools. So many times, I had a meeting the other day with someone, Francie Hunt with Stand for Children. That's a nonprofit organization that's working in schools in Rosebank Elementary specifically to try to create a sense that school, people in the neighborhood care about that school. She did a study there, and most of the teachers there feel like no one cares how that school does. So, we need to have groups like that be a cheerleader for those kinds of groups and advocate for those nonprofit groups that are working on the ground as well as seeking ways to increase the funding. Clearly we can't have a successful school without money, but at the same time, it's going to take hard work and effort by people that are committed to doing the time, helping to train teachers, helping to tutor children. Those are the things that are going to be really matter to turn the schools around. The sense that they're important to the neighborhood, that they're important to the parents, and look for, as councilman, I would work to advocate for those groups, for the Martha O'Brien Center that's also coming up with new programs focused on education. The Stand for Children, those kinds of groups are going to be a critical component. And as councilman, I would advocate and be a cheerleader for those kind of groups and point them out and help them any way we can to improve the school system in Nashville. Thank you.
Education is clearly important to our entire community, and one thing I've learned that in looking at things, I think that one of the biggest tools and one of the biggest things we can do for our schools is to increase expectations. And that extends beyond just the parents, beyond just the teachers, and beyond just the students, but must include the entire neighborhood, because we all have a stake in the quality of our education. It's a community issue. When you talk about having a sustainable community, and you look at what we have here in East Nashville, we want people to come here to settle down, to grow roots, and to do that, we've got to have schools that they want to attend, they want to be a part of. So there has to be a broad buy-in from a variety of interest in our schools. We currently have some good trends going on. You've probably heard the mayor talk about our, we've increased our test scores, we've decreased truancy, and we've increased our graduation rates. Those must continue to move on a good path. And we also have to make sure, though, among all of the options and all the things that are going on, we continue to make sure that the educational opportunities are there for every single student who lives in our community. Just a couple quick things that you guys probably are aware of are going on. And we've seen what involvement and what buy-in can do for schools like Laughlin, for schools like East Lit. We're seeing that now with the STEM Magnet program going on at Stratford, and what that's going to do in preparing our students to have a strong background in science, technology, engineering, and math. It's critical that we continue to give these students a curriculum that offers them viable prospects for the future, and I'll make sure that we have those programs in place. We also know that there's a couple of new charter schools going on. There's an elementary and a middle school coming online this fall. It's important that as these charter schools come online, that whatever lessons we can learn from those, we're sharing in an open, transparent manner with the other schools so that we can all share on successes and all work together to make sure that we have provided to the best extent possible a quality educational opportunity for every single student in the neighborhood. That's what it's going to take to make sure that we have a strong community, we continue to attract strong economic development, and that we have a place that we can all be proud of.
Let me take a second. If you've got your 3x5 cards and you want to start filling them out, Brett does have some pens if you're short of a pen. And just raise your hand when you've got your question done, and they'll start picking them up and categorizing them, because we're getting ready to go into the Q&A for the audience. The third question. The special zoning ordinance has caused concern among some citizens in District 6. Now that it's been approved, do you see problems with it? And will you commit to working with local neighborhoods and business groups to make this ordinance work for and not against us? Hans?
I'm committed to the Gallatin Pike SP. A lot of time and effort was put into creating that document, and I think we need it to continue, we need to have it for future growth. But that said, I think there's obviously room for improvement of that document, and I'd be willing to meet with all the important stakeholders that have a say in that document, both neighborhoods, business owners, other departments of Metro, from public works to water. I think we really need to take a step back and see whether the plan itself is moving us toward the direction we want in terms of having a Gallatin road that looks better, that has the type of businesses that we want. I think we need to look carefully at the idea that perhaps in its current form, it's creating this idea of unintended consequences. For instance, in terms of the non-conforming use, is that in fact sustaining and keeping those types of businesses there rather than eventually moving them out? I think also there's some issues with conflicting requirements between the Gallatin Road SP and other entities such as NES or the Water Department. I was talking with someone the other day who gave me an example of a building of a current business that wants to move from a location near 5 Points to Main Street, where it would essentially create a brand new building, what we'd all want to see on Gallatin Pike. Because of the current situation, that building may incur a significantly increased cost because of this idea that the Gallatin Pike SP requires the building to be built to the corner. The current building, the old building that would be torn down to build a new one, sits on some old sewer lines. Metro Water says you can't build on the new sewer lines. So automatically, that business owner is going to have to face an increased cost of like $200,000 to put its building in accordance with the SP in order to comply with the conflicting requirement of Metro Water. Those are some common sense solutions that we could look for to see, can we amend that plan? Can we make it where that's a reasonable change, or so that these businesses don't have to face these additional costs right out of the gate that may be a detriment or maybe a determining factor that says, well, I can't do the deal. Those are the kind of things that, I think all of us would agree that we want to see new businesses on the Gallatin Pike. To me, we need to see if there's changes like that where it opens the lines of communication between the planning department, the business owners, and the concerned residents to find common sense adjustments to the plan. Thank you.
The Gallatin Road SP, as many of us recall, extends from just right over here all the way up to Raleigh Parkway. Sorry for that. And we look back on thinking about what that was. It was a group of neighbors, a group of council members at the time, involving vested interest in the area, involving people who had a stake in what was going on, to come together and craft a vision for what they wanted for the future of that corridor. And I think that by and large that process was productive because it involved experts in civic design, as well as the neighborhood and business groups in the area that would be affected by that. And we have to look at it from a standpoint as far as, Gallatin Road didn't become what it was overnight, and we're not going to be able to fix it overnight. But I think that we can continue to find good ways to move forward in a good direction. I think that the SP as it currently is could be open for some changes. I think that if any changes are going to be proposed, it's important that those happen in an open, transparent manner that involves all the relevant stakeholders, and we try to build a consensus on what we want that to be. And we look at what opportunities that the Gallatin Road corridor could be, and the possibilities are endless. If you talk about what you can do and what we need to do as a community to promote more growth, more retail, more commercial, and more residential facilities lining that corridor, I think that the opportunities are going to be there. And I think that the SP has been a good first step. In the time ahead, if you guys elect me as your Metro Council member, I'll be happy to work with whomever wants to provide input in making sure that happens. It's important, and I think that this relates very well to the platform I'm pushing of smart growth and trying to bring more activity and try to bring more economic activity to our vital corridors. I think it's important that we focus the development along those areas and make sure that we do that in a manner that continues to generate activity there. One thing that we're we might also see is improved areas of mass transit. Right now, the Gallatin Road